A lot of what we're talking about, or a lot of what comes up, is how to relate to the past skillfully so that it does not negatively affect our present. We can think of moments in the past, for example, that are filled with regret. We can think of moments in the past that we wish had not happened, either because we did something that we didn't like, or because someone else did something we didn't like, or simply something happened that we don't appreciate or impacted our lives negatively. If, however, we view the past as something to learn from, then we have something that we can work with in the present. When it comes to the past, we tend to get bogged down by either regrets, wishing that certain things hadn't happened or that we hadn't done certain things, or we're longing for something that happened in the past that no longer is. Perhaps there was a relationship that we really cherished, but that relationship is no longer. Or maybe there were things that we did or said that we regret that weigh on us. But what the Buddha encourages us to do is to not run back to the past. Specifically, that's what he says to the monks in the discourse, One Fine Night. And this idea of running back to the past is sort of using the present to reflect on the past in a way that's unhelpful. So reflection, wise reflection anyway, involves considering the past, observing the past, and learning from it. Unwise reflection involves this sort of chasing things that have already happened as if they were still happening in the present. So when we think about the past as things that have already happened and things that we cannot change, then our encouragement is to learn about how to use those experiences of the past to make our present better. Now, in terms of things that we may have regretted doing, for example, we can use those past experiences to make different choices. And this is where sort of our activity or sphere of influence lies in the present with regards to the past. We can make a different decision that doesn't change what happens in the past or what happened in the past, but it does, however, create stepping stones in the present as well as the future. So even though we separate past, present, and future into different categories, they are all interconnected. What we do in each moment has an effect both on our past actions, present actions, and future actions in the way that I described, for example. So if there's, say, a bad habit that we had in the past and we did some unskillful behaviors because of it, if we make an effort to change that in the present, then we're creating seeds for change that happens both now because of what we're doing, but as well as in the future. That doesn't change what we did in the past, but we can see now that we're changing, we're becoming more different. And that difference, that, let's say, improvement on our past actions, is a sort of healing of the past. When we're healing from the past in this way, or learning to use the past as an experience to learn from, then we become free of its grasp. It doesn't hold anything over our heads, right? We can look to the past, learn from the past, and be free in the present to make different choices, or to make choices that lead to where we'd like to get to. Now, when it comes to the future, that's another area that often bogs us down, often leaves us feeling perhaps anxious, nervous, uncertain, and that uncertainty can create uncomfortable feelings and also cause us to do things in the present that may not be in our best interest. Now, the important thing that the Buddha does remind us is that the future is uncertain. By its very nature, the future is always slightly out of reach. It hasn't happened yet. And then when it does happen, it's happening in the present, and then eventually becomes the past, right? So it sort of is this uncertain, blurry somewhere over there that, because it is out of reach, makes us feel nervous often. However, this doesn't mean that the future is something we should fear. Part of Buddhist practice is learning to become comfortable with the uncertain. And we become comfortable with the uncertain not by not planning or not by thinking that the future is so far out there that we don't have to worry about it or think about it or even care about it, but rather we take steps in the present so that the future isn't as scary. So we try to think about how we can be free from the future in the sense of not letting it keep us in a stranglehold. What is it that we can do in order to plan for the future, move towards a future that we like, that doesn't restrict us, that doesn't keep us anxious, always leaning towards something rather than experiencing what's happening in the present? So again, thinking of past and future, the injunction or the encouragement is to view them as spheres of time that can help us in the present moment, or that we can use the present moment to help how we feel or view them. In particular, with the future, then we're seeing that we can't predict what can happen, but we can take steps that lead us in a direction that we can, with some probability, say will turn into something wholesome. So we know, for example, that if we lead our lives with kindness, if we lead our lives with joy, if we lead our lives with consideration, then whatever feelings that we're having in the present moment, as far as that's concerned, are things that will very likely continue into the future. We know that skillful behavior done in the present leads to skillful outcomes. And that's something that we can sort of extend towards the future. So if we're worried, for example, that we may experience a future that is unhappy, that we may experience a future without fulfilling relationships, for example, or fulfilling work, well, we know that in the present, if we're working towards relationships that are wholesome, if we're working towards an occupation that is fulfilling and wholesome, then even though we can't predict exactly what the future may look like, we know that in the present moment, we're doing all that we can and also experiencing results in the present so that the future will also be wholesome.